You might not realize it, but mathematics can unlock incredible power. You can use it to make your dreams become reality. Mathematics is a powerful tool for exploring life on Earth and for discovering our place in the universe. Mathematics is changing the way we play our games, the way we think about ourselves. It's the fuel that's driving the information age. This is mathematics like you've never seen it before.
Major funding for this program comes from the National Science Foundation. America's investment in the future. And the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to increase understanding of the application of mathematics in everyday life. Additional funding provided by the McDonnell Douglas Foundation and the Alcoa Foundation, with exclusive corporate support from Texas Instruments.
Texas Instruments is proud to partner with the education community to create the calculators that help children do extraordinary things. Because the more our children can get out of math and science, the more they'll get out of life.
Pure mathematics was born in ancient Greece. The Greeks believed mathematics was a language that described an ideal world filled with perfection. They felt the same way about athletics. Every 4 years, Olympic Games were held to honor the god Zeus. In these sacred rituals, victorious athletes embodied perfection and were crowned with the laurel wreath. Today, mathematics is helping aspiring athletes to achieve their ideals. It's being harnessed to understand the motion of a body in the air and the chemistry of a body racing to the finish. Mathematics is increasing the speed and the power of the game. Coaches use it to read the mind of their opponent. Scientists rely on it to look inside the minds of athletes. In ways the Greeks might never have imagined, sports is a game of numbers. On fall weekends across the country, the same contest is played out on a 100 by 50-yard rectangle. Game strategies have always relied on statistics. In many colleges today, these statistics are created with a video camera instead of a pencil. To gain a competitive edge, coaches at West Virginia University build a database with images as well as numbers. Don Paluzik and his assistants depend on mathematics to analyze their opponents. Each week, they collect data from videotapes and condense it into reports.
So whenever we get ready to play somebody, we have to get a scouting report, and the numbers are where it all starts.
By regulation, all teams must send their game videotapes to opponents 6 days before they play. After Paluzik digitizes the game, the particulars of each play are recorded by assistant Rob Keys.
40 fire, Liberty defensively. First and 10, ball on the -33 right hash. I take the game and I break it down football-wise. I take the fronts and coverages of the defense plus the offense and put it back into the computer. So it'll match up with the video that's in the hard drive of the computer. 570, strike.
When all the information is in the database, Palooza can characterize the opponent in mathematical terms. The success and failure of specific plays are expressed in percentages. Patterns and tendencies are revealed in numbers.
We like to think that there's two important downs. First and 10, third and long. What do they do on first and 10? What is their big tendency? Do they like to run? Do they like to pass? So you start zeroing in on where they like to attack and how they like to attack.
Early in the week, statistical reports are delivered to the other coaches.
Here's the written report on their favorite runs. I formation team, top play is, what do you think? Isolation, 60 snaps. Handoff sweep is next.
This information helps them to formulate a strategy for Saturday's game. Statistical relationships come to life on the screen. Videotapes are edited to show West Virginia players the strengths and weaknesses of their opponent.
Quarterback, North Carolina plays Liberty Press 60% of the time. Those corners challenge the receivers. Take away the passing game. Challenge you to run it. If you can't run it, you can't beat them.
Rob Keys is teaching his own defensive line to mimic the opponent in practice, so the offense can test their game plan.
Like I said, defensive end right here. Stay at home. Don't bite on this fake. They're running naked. Stay upfield. Stay upfield. Look, drive upfield right through here.
That afternoon, the defensive line takes to the field to test offensive plays created with statistics. To refine game strategies, cameras record the practice.
When we practice against ourselves, we then take the drills that we run and we put them into the computer. Is it a good play? Why is it a good play? Is it a bad play? Why is it a bad play?
On Saturday, the real game begins. Each coach can be sure that his rival knows what he knows, and maybe more.
I don't think that you can know enough about your opponent. I think that the more you know about your opponent, the better off you are.
On the sideline, coaches are using mathematics to win the game, but in other sports, mathematics is changing the game itself. For more than half a century, the game of tennis changed little since the Victorian age. But in recent years, it has become a game of power and speed that is televised for millions around the world.
59.
The evolution of the sport and its growing popularity has been influenced by the work of this man.
My formal name is Rudrapatna Ramnath, but most of my friends call me Ram for short. My main field is aerospace engineering. I used to play a lot of tennis, local tournaments and school and college, and still continue to play.
25 years ago, Ram Ramnath began testing rackets for a tennis magazine.
There was no independent testing procedure. All the racket manufacturers had claims of being the best. I'm happy to say that ours is the only independent testing facility in the country.
In modest surroundings at MIT's Department of Aeronautics, Ramnath and his students measure what happens when a ball hits a racket,
When a racket strikes the ball, 5,000ths of a second is all that it stays on the racket.
To capture the moment, Ramnath first relied on strobe photography, which was developed at MIT by Harold Edgerton. Edgerton's images reveal for the first time how forces are translated from an athlete to a ball. Ramnath measured these forces and made an important discovery.
The ball is absolutely flattened. It looks like a pancake. And the strings start deforming. And then after this happens, the frame starts bending. The energy that goes into bending the racket has very little effect on the ball because it's already left the racket. Earlier, a common belief among players was that if you use a flexible racket, perhaps you could get more power. We found out that the stiffer the racket, the more power is given to the ball because less energy goes to bending the racket itself. Stiffer rackets lead to greater power, and the manufacturers responded with new materials, new designs and so on to provide greater and greater power.
Traditional wooden rackets were soon discarded for stiffer composite models with larger heads. To increase stiffness, racket frames also grew wider. Today, Ramnath uses radar to define racket performance in mathematical terms.
117.
Ramnath measures the speed of the ball going to and from the racket. With these two numbers, he creates a ratio called the coefficient of restitution, which defines the power of the racket.
The rebound velocity divided by the incoming velocity of the ball is what is called coefficient of restitution. The higher that number is, the more efficient the racket is, because it gives more of the incoming energy back to the ball. So if the ball comes in at 100 miles an hour and the rebound velocity is only 80 miles an hour, the coefficient of restitution is 0.8.
Ramnath measures the coefficient of restitution at many points on the racket's surface. He uses mathematics to interpolate between points to create a three-dimensional map. He locates the area where the coefficient of restitution is 0.4 or more and defines it as the racket's sweet spot. Ramnath has tested more than 2,000 rackets.
Okay, let's try it now.
He relies on the same mathematical tools that he uses as an aerospace engineer.
The influence of, say, mathematics and physics on sports, it's no different from the application to any advanced aerospace activity, except that the bodies that we're talking about are not spacecraft, but tennis racket and tennis balls. What we do is invoke the laws of physics and mathematics to interpret the data, both hand in hand, guide us through this entire process. And the 8.2 corresponds to 9.1 power rating.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, look at this. This wide body has 10.9. So that's...
Ramnath uses mathematics to interpret his measurements.
Stiffness, so it's 6.5. There's no process which is free from errors. Whether it is in aerospace missile business or in the tennis racket ball interaction, there's a spread, a dispersion of the measurements. And this is where mathematics comes in and helps us determine a best estimate based on a given set of measurements. It forces us to be very precise in our thinking.
Over the years, Ramnath has watched the coefficient of restitution increase, and with it, the power of the game.
That's right down the center. 124 miles per hour. Beautiful motion on the serve. We'll get a chance to look at it.
Stiffer rackets are changing the sport, but Ramnath has discovered a trade-off.
Nature doesn't allow us to have all the things we want. If we want great power in a racket, an inescapable consequence of that is that it also produces great stress in the forearm. So the shock is likely to cause tennis elbow. Being an engineer enhances the joy or the pleasure I get out of tennis, knowing it at a deeper level. So mathematics is essential to every step of this process. It's a way of applying reason to very complex issues.
In the world of sports, mathematics plays an important role in design. Without mathematics, creating a racing yacht would be impossible.
You win or you lose. And it's two boats on the race course at one time. You can't even get an honorable second place in this game. You're just plain the loser.
John Marshall has been designing America's Cup boats for over 20 years. In 1995, in San Diego, his boat raced against New Zealand, but lost the Cup.
And when someone else goes and basically blows us out of the water, it's a pretty good challenge. We want to go and get it back.
To design a winning boat, Marshall must comply with the mathematical rule created by the racing committee.
The rule is blindingly simple. It's a little arithmetic equation that relates three things that are fundamental to boat speed. Sail area, more of it in principle makes you go faster. Weight, more of it is bad. And length, drag is reduced if they're longer.
When one variable changes, it affects the others. If sail area increases, weight or length must decrease. Adding weight would reduce sail or length, and so on. To find the winning combination, Marshall begins with statistics.
You need to analyze the meteorology in the area where you're going to race, get a very good statistical picture of that, and select a set of design parameters that fit those conditions closely. If the boat's going to be designed for strong winds, you probably won't need too much sail area, so you might sacrifice sail area to buy length.
By predicting the wrong conditions, a designer can lose more than a race. In 1995, the Australian boat, fine-tuned for lighter winds, broke apart in rough seas and sank in less than 2 minutes.
And then they were also thrown into this set.
For designers like Marshall, the real nightmare is a ticking clock.
Residual resistance.
One of the things that's really sobering about America's Cup is that we already know the date of the first race. And they're not going to change that if we're not quite ready with the design of the boat. So you waste a day, you can't get it back.
To meet their deadline, Marshall's team must quickly evaluate many designs. It's impossible to build and test them all, so they simulate them with mathematics.
Our design problem in a very fundamental way is to develop hundreds of additional boat speed per dollar spent and per day available. The mathematical modeling gives you the chance to sort out a wide range of ideas very quickly.
Components are designed with equations created with the laws of physics. Sails must capture the wind to drive the boat forward. The hull must cut through water with minimal drag. The keel must provide stability without adding extra weight. These elements are simulated to determine critical variables, like the width of the boat.
If you elect to go for a narrower boat, there'll be less friction as the water flows over the hull. But one of the things that keeps a boat from tipping over is its width. So you have to reach a balance between the width of the boat and the stability that's required. And that's a very, very critical part of the design equation. The next thing the designer is very interested in is the appendages under the boat. The keel holds about 40,000 pounds of lead ballast, and that's the counterweight that holds the boat upright against the sail forces. It is rather obnoxious to drag 40,000 pounds of lead through the sea, and so the trick is to find the shape for the lead bulb that has the least drag.
To check the mathematical model, a scale model of the keel is built to test its performance in the real world. To measure drag, it's easier to use air instead of water. In a wind tunnel, the drag forces are determined with streaks of wet paint. Several keels will be tested to improve the design of the model. Hull models are tested in water. The wave maker simulates conditions predicted by the weather model. Testing refines the mathematics of each component. These are then linked together by another mathematical model to form a complete boat. 5 boat models are linked through yet another mathematical model to compete in a virtual yacht race that predicts which design is the fastest.
So what you're looking for is that simple single number description of good versus bad and see which one is faster. Given an environment where there wasn't a starting gun on a given date, nothing would ever be designed and finished. It would go on forever. So eventually you know you have to race, so you finally have to tell a designer, that's it, no more experiments, no more computer simulations, send the design to the builder, let's start building it, and then we'll start optimizing it.
Over several months, the mathematical design becomes a physical reality. The boat design is a fiercely guarded secret, so it is moved in the dark of night. When day breaks, sentries look for spies while the hull is lowered in the water. After rigging is complete, Marshall's boat, Young America, is born on the wind at last.
Well, we focus enormously on the design problem, the mathematical problem. And it is a great deal of fun to take the step beyond that and start working with the athletes and really see it do its stuff. It would be impossible to design a boat with a group of people working on it if there weren't some common language and some common vocabulary, and that the way they communicate is the language of mathematics. It's the enabler of consensus. Everyone will pull together and get behind the common design because the answer is one that they can believe in.
Winning the America's Cup may depend on whose mathematics is the best. But yacht racing is not the only sport to become a game of numbers.
Okay. All right, let's go over that a little bit.
To compete at the highest levels, skaters must perform a series of jumps. The most difficult is the triple axel, which involves 3.5 turns in the air.
The hardest part is to transfer your weight over that right side at the right time and straight. And get the feet in fast. Don't take a long time to get from there to there, and make sure that the feet and ankles are tight.
Kathy Casey is coaching Damon Allen, who is ranked 5th in the nation. Her goal is to help him master the jump.
When I began skating, the triple axel was kind of like, a few people had accomplished triple axel. And now triple axel is like, if you don't have a triple axel, you might as well just go back home, pack your bags, and get back on the plane.
The triple axel did not appear in competition until recently. Several years ago, on a world tour, Casey and her skaters were taken by surprise.
People who I considered weren't so very talented from Russia were doing triple axels. And I said, those Russians know something we don't know, and I think we better try to catch up with them if we can.
Casey believed the science of biomechanics would reveal the answer. At her request, sports scientists from the Olympic Training Center brought their cameras to her rink to analyze the jump.
Kathy Casey came to us and asked us to do a study on the single, double, and triple axels. How long does it take a skater from when he leaves the ice to reach his rotating position? Is the triple axel higher than the double axel, or are the skaters just rotating faster? Those are quantitative variables, which you can't get just from watching the jump. They have to be measured.
To understand the jump, it had to be translated into mathematical language, a job that would take Deborah King and her colleagues many months to complete.
You have to analyze each tape one jump at a time. We pause at each frame, and we mark the head, each shoulder, the hips, the elbows, the wrists, pretty much all the major joints of the arms and legs. You repeat that for the next camera view, and then you calculate the three-dimensional coordinates of all the joints of the skater for that one jump. And then once you have those three-dimensional coordinates, you can basically reconstruct the jump on the computer.
With each jump reduced to numerical coordinates, King could now begin to answer some questions.
These skaters cannot disobey the laws of physics. Like what goes up must come down. How fast they're going right at the instant of takeoff is going to determine how high they jump. And then basically you use different mathematical techniques incorporating these laws of physics to find out the answers.
To understand the choreography of the jumps, King needed to learn how skaters used each limb to execute them. Using geometry and trigonometry, she connected joints to form angles to measure the position of arms and legs. The video camera, which recorded 60 frames per second, was used to measure time. Plotting the location of each joint from one frame to the next, King could use calculus to see how the skater's body parts changed throughout the jump. With statistics, she could then determine how the single, double, and triple jumps were different. The question was whether to jump higher or spin faster.
If you do your very best jump, very best single, your very best double, and your very best triple, they're all going to be the same jump height. So the way they're getting the added rotations is really getting into their rotating position more quickly. We presented the results to Kathy, and we gave her all these graphs and sat down with her. And basically she told us she had absolutely no idea what any of that meant.
I said, guys, we're in kindergarten. We're not PhD majors in biomechanics. We're in kindergarten. You have to make it so that skating coaches and skaters who haven't studied biomechanics understand this.
So we went and tried to learn a little bit about figure skating vocabulary, and she worked to understand a little more about science and math. And once we were communicating, it took off, and she was really excited with the results.
We did find out that you're not in the air any longer, which is amazing. That's very, very interesting. You're not in the air any longer.
Before the study, we believed that you need to throw your leg out further for a triple. In reality, it needs to be closer, so you can get into the air and into your rotation much quicker.
That was better. Let's go over that. All right, ready? Step, up, quick, out quick. Good. All right, you've got to remember, you've got to stay in, and don't anticipate the landing till right before, and then be much quicker. We found out that the people with the strongest arms did better triples because it was who could pull in quick and tight with their arms that made that extra rotation. Okay, good.
Damon Allen, 21 years old, from Colorado Springs.
Nice triple axel, double toe, and a wonderful back headless spin.
This is the moment that's a complete rush to know you skated your best.
An athlete takes his performance to new heights. Skating is one of many sports where mathematics is helping athletes to push their limits. Each year in Hawaii, endurance athletes compete in the Ironman triathlon. In a continuous event, they swim 2.5 miles in the open sea, bike 112 miles, and run a marathon 26.2 miles under the tropical sun. In the year 2000, the triathlon will become an Olympic event for the first time.
So, Susan, I think one thing that's probably interesting is your stride rate's definitely higher.
At the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, Susan Bartholomew is training to be a member of the U.S. team.
Okay, you can go ahead and hop on.
To improve her performance, a team of sports scientists is analyzing her running style. Video cameras record her gait from several angles, at normal speed and in slow motion.
Because running is such a fast motion, it's not something you could easily break down with the eye. So we can basically freeze time, and we can basically measure exactly what's going on. And it allows you to just get that edge, which is what's necessary in the Olympics to be at the elite level. The study of motion in general is pretty fascinating. It's been studied for a long time in the past. just man's ability to overcome gravity and the forces around him is a pretty exciting concept. And then to be able to study that on a minute level, you can learn a lot.
Relax, let the hips drop.
Susan's coach, George Dallum, believes that a shorter, quicker stride is more energy efficient for distance runners than a longer, slower one.
Efficiency is very important in endurance athletes because if you think about it, they repeat the same motion over and over and over again. So even though a small difference may not seem like much in the short run, those small differences add up to be very meaningful.
The technique that we're learning is it's a more efficient stride. So that's what we're aiming for, so you can maintain higher speeds with less energy.
From recorded images, Susan's joints are identified and connected.
Still, that's getting again close there. Again, that's where you saw it.
Geometric angles are computed for many strides and averaged to find differences in her running style.
Oh, there you're clearly...
Yeah, style.
That's closer to what I remember your foot strike looking like before.
But I can see, like, when I go back to my old, where I'm not thinking about it, I'm starting to pick up some characteristics of the new style.
How does it feel to you now, the new style? Does it feel comfortable?
To me, it feels like it requires a little more energy. I think because I'm moving my feet faster.
By providing quantifying numbers to movement, you're able to be objective and visually demonstrate to an athlete, this is your performance.
With mathematics to guide her, Susan can learn to run more efficiently. But to be a triathlete, she must also be a proficient swimmer and cyclist.
There's not just one sport, you have 3 different sports. It's more fun because there's more variety, you don't get burned out. At the same time, I think it's hard to really focus on 3 different sports because you need to learn how to balance your training for each discipline separately.
Again, swim this one by feel. You know, if you come in fast, then maybe tighten it up a little bit.
To compete in 3 different sports, triathletes are in constant danger of overtraining.
You know, we're training as much as a lot of runners do, as much as a lot of cyclists do, and as much as a lot of swimmers do. But we have to do it all in one day, and so it takes up the whole day. I mean, I'm training basically 8 hours a day. I've been overtrained, and it's not fun. You get injuries, you get sick a lot. Your body starts falling apart.
For Tim DeBoom, training has become a game of numbers.
About 80% healed and 20%.
Monthly testing determines his workload.
Let's get you up there and see how everything looks and feels.
The treadmill that tests mechanical efficiency can also measure the metabolic efficiency of Tim's body as he performs increasing levels of work. A breathing apparatus measures his oxygen consumption.
What we're measuring is the difference between the amount of oxygen that the athlete breathes in and the amount of oxygen that the athlete expires.
On for us. Hey, Tim, it's going pretty slow. You can jump on there. Sure everything feels all right. Okay, I'm going to bring you up slowly now.
That tells us how much they're using in order to perform the work or the exercise that they're doing at that point in time.
30 seconds, Tim.
A transmitter on Tim's chest monitors his heart rate. Breathing and heart rate increase to pump oxygen-rich blood to muscles.
You should find a linear progression. As the work becomes harder, they'll use more oxygen so that the muscle has oxygen to do the work.
Okay, you have about 30 seconds left here, Tim. You want to give me a number. How does this workload feel for you?
With training, you're able to do more work using less oxygen, so you become more efficient.
Heart rate of 147. Good job. Okay, grab the rails and straddle. Drop your hand.
The most critical measurement is taken from a series of blood samples. Working muscles create a chemical byproduct called lactate.
Back on 623 for 3 minutes.
As stress increases, more lactate is released in the blood and reabsorbed by the body. At a critical point, production exceeds absorption, causing a dramatic surge in the bloodstream. This change defines the lactate threshold. Too much exercise beyond the lactate threshold will eventually lead to burnout.
You know, it shows you how hard you can push it before your body starts filling up with lactic acid and you can't function there anymore. So it really sets the limits for your training.
Okay? So the most important stuff we can give you is right there, that threshold stuff. Heart rate, pace, power, etc. That's where
By graphing test results, Tim's lactate threshold is linked to his heart rate. Understanding this relationship allows him to monitor his training with the beat of his heart.
Your heart rate would be pretty much straddling that lactate threshold line, where you would need a little bit more recovery.
Fitness is a very slow, gradual progression and over a period of number of years. The subtle differences are oftentimes beyond perception of the athlete, so oftentimes it's very hard for them to see it. What the mathematical quantification really does is get the athlete to see the progress more easily and to keep control over what they're doing, not to go too far.
At the Olympic Training Center, athletes are striving to make their bodies mechanically and metabolically efficient. With mathematical tools, they can measure their progress and chart their course for the future.
The ability to very precisely measure the athlete's capabilities, capacities, helps us develop a very individualized program. So that might be enough to move them from, being a top 10 finisher to being a medal finisher. And that's what this kind of program's about.
Years of training do not guarantee a victory. At the moment of truth, athletes must harness their body's ability with the powers of their mind. To be a winner, an athlete must learn to concentrate under stress. And scientists are using mathematics to learn how they do it.
We know so much about athletes, about their bodies and the systems and how they should work, what angle they should hold the bat for a good hit. But we don't really know as much in that same way, in a quantifiable way, about athletes in terms of their mental performance states.
The first thing we'll do is put on our ear and eye electrodes.
Amy Hoffler is studying the mental activity of elite athletes by measuring their brain activity during performance.
What we're trying to do is examine those highly focused attentional states so that we can learn more about how to help people develop their concentration for better performance.
Every moment the brain generates tiny amounts of electrical current.
Can you hold that?
Hoffler can measure this current with electrodes.
There are measurements on the exterior surface of your skull that correlate to particular anatomical areas in your brain. And so we select electrode sites based on what kinds of behavioral phenomenon we would like to measure.
To record brain waves, subjects must be motionless. So Hoffler has chosen to study marksmen.
Marksmanship is a sport that requires a very high degree of concentration and focus, as many sports do. But a marksman is not running around on a basketball court, and that enhances our ability to take the kinds of measures that we want.
I'm Kim Howe, and I've been shooting since I was 13, and I started through a 4-H program in Pennsylvania. Then when I was 16, I went to nationals, and I won both of my events and broke a national record, and I was like, wow, this is great.
While one computer records Kim's brainwaves, another will record her performance. Instead of using live ammunition, a simulator on the rifle tip projects the light beam 12 feet to a target half the size of a dime. The computer enlarges the target on the screen and tracks the path of the gun as Kim focuses her mind on the shot.
Right before I shoot a shot, I'll take a deep breath. I keep saying to myself, relax, relax. And then once I'm done completing the shot, then I might take what you might say a mini vacation. I might start thinking of other things.
Sometimes, Kim's concentration reaches a peak of intensity that she and many athletes call the flow.
Well, the flow, I feel, is just when your position is perfect, your mental state of mind is just on its top level. And you just feel like you're floating on air. I wish I could find this more often.
20 subjects have volunteered for Hoffler's study. Marcus Scrivener has developed unique strategies to help him concentrate.
The first thing people tell you to listen to if you're going to prepare for a match is classical music or, Kenny G. But it doesn't work for me. For some reason, this heavier stuff just makes me kind of tune out everything out. I'll have a song in my head and I'll pick up the rifle and as soon as I drop my head, the song stops. I'll break the shot and someone hits the pause button again. I pick up right where I left off. I guess it's just kind of a way of keeping your conscious mind busy. And then all of a sudden switches its focus. And then as soon as it's done performing its job, then it can go back to, being distracted.
To better understand the minds of skilled marksmen, Hoffler is comparing their brain waves with novice marksmen.
I'm thinking about holding still and thinking about keeping my breathing regular, and up in the moments before firing, not breathing, trying to keep my left arm and my elbow still. A little bit of movement there really moves the gun around and keeps me off of the target. When I see all of the missed shots, I begin to get a little discouraged and wonder if I'm ever going to hit the target.
Psychologists have analyzed the thoughts of athletes for many years. But brain waves provide an objective view of their mental states. Working with her colleague, Brad Hatfield, Amy Hoffler looks for patterns in the waveforms.
When we collect the brain activity from the scalp, it's a very complex waveform. And in order to bring some meaning to that, we do a mathematical process called a Fourier analysis, which breaks that complex waveform into its component parts.
Each waveform is comprised of several frequencies. With mathematics, they can determine the magnitude of each frequency at every site on the head.
That mathematical analysis enables us to look at the relative activity of different areas of the brain. Lower frequencies tell us the brain is at rest.
Yep.
Okay. High frequencies tell us that that area of the brain is very active.
To locate active areas, Hatfield and Hoffler select higher frequencies and average them for each marksman to find patterns of activity.
Yeah, you can definitely see the greater activation of the left hemisphere here. Much more pronounced than over here in the right. Because we know that different processes are associated with different areas of the brain, then we can make some assumptions about what kinds of mental processes are occurring.
Verbal tasks are processed on the left side above the ear. Tasks involving space and movement are handled on the right. Emotions appear at the front, while visual processing is at the back of the head.
Yeah.
By comparing the results of each skill group, Hatfield and Hoffler find differences in their mental states. 5 seconds before trigger pull, the attention of the novice is active in all areas. It continues to build until the gun is fired. 5 seconds before trigger pull, the brain of a skilled marksman is less active than the novice and remains so until the gun is fired.
The people who are at the low end of the skill level would show increased activation in the left hemisphere, where they're thinking too much about what they do. They have to start at that stage. As the elite athlete focuses on the target, all they call into play is what helps them to perform the task. Okay, 6 minutes 45, and then the triggers for the shots, that's right.
Hoffler and Hatfield believe that when athletes train their bodies, they train their minds as well. They hope that measuring this process will help athletes learn to do it more efficiently.
Perhaps if an athlete could see what their brain waves look like, and if we know a pattern that is connected to a high performance state, then maybe they would be able to develop those patterns to improve their performance.
It's really interesting to see how my brain waves are compared to other shooters. Maybe they do something differently that might help me in the future.
Brain waves are signals from a world hidden behind a veil of complexity. Using mathematics, scientists are deciphering these signals to better understand the mysteries beyond.
That's the beauty of mathematics. It takes nature and breaks it down into some simple principles. And that's exactly what we're trying to do in our work with the mind, a very complex organ.
In this age of technology, mathematics is everywhere. It helps us to understand what we could once only imagine. In the world of sports, mathematics is working at every level. Helping athletes who strive for perfection to achieve their goals and fulfill their dreams, whatever they may be.
To learn more about the Life by the Numbers series, visit PBS Online at the internet address on your screen. Exclusive corporate support for this program comes from Texas Instruments.
Texas Instruments is proud to partner with the education community to create the calculators that help children do extraordinary things. Because the more our children can get out of math and science, the more they'll get out of life.
With major funding from the National Science Foundation. America's investment in the future. And the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to increase understanding of the application of mathematics in everyday life. Additional funding provided by the McDonnell Douglas Foundation and the Alcoa Foundation. To order a video of this program, other programs in the Life by the Numbers series, or the companion book, please call 1-800-274-1307 or write to the address on your screen.
This is PBS.